So I have some code here that I think that you could start with in your read CSV. Let's see if I could just copy and paste this over here. So instead of actually before I do that, let me stop this. Get out, and if I go into my WAD directory and I run pytest xv on currently what I have for WAD, we'll see. Maybe I need to save it there. Let's try that again. Okay, so we see a couple things here. IO is not defined. It's complaining here. So let's go import IO. And then let's try again. So what we're trying to do is we want to run this test read CSV. And it's testing the read CSV function, which right now just executes pass, which if you'll remember is a no operation, a no op. And if you don't ever explicitly say return, then the default return value from a Python function is the value none. So it's calling read CSV with this text that it creates, and it's trying to assert that the return value, which is none, is equal to this data structure that we're hoping to get back. And so that's not the case. It got back none. It did not get back a list of tuples, so we're going to need to fix that. So I have some code here that we can have. Let's see. I need to fix the indentation here. And so the idea, the idea is that we're going to create this reader. We're using the csv.dict reader, and it's going to read from the file handle that's being passed. And we're going to say that the delimiter is a comma. Now, something you could think about for expanding this code and making it more flexible would be you could actually define the delimiter as one of the options to your programs. You could have it default to the comma, but you could have it so that the reader could override that with, maybe it's a tab character or maybe a pipe character, and then you could pass that in as another argument to read CSV. What is the delimiter to read for this file handle? Or you could even do some sniffing here. You could look at the file handle, you could look at the name of the file handle, and you could say, well, if it ends in .csv, then we'll assume it's a comma, but if it ends in .txt or .tab, maybe we'll assume that the delimiter is a tab character. So, things to think about to make your code more flexible. Here, we're only going to deal with comma-separated values to start off, and so we're going to go ahead and hard code this. But that's what it means to be hard coded, meaning it's actually part of the program here and not a flexible parameter that we can pass in. So, something to think about as you write your own code. I'm going to create this same pattern that we've seen so many times, creating an empty list. And then I'm going to iterate over some other iterable. Here, if I say for rec and reader, it's going to give me each one of the rows from that file handle as a dictionary, where the keys of the dictionary are going to come from the first line of that file, and the values are going to come from the subsequent lines. And that's why I took all that time to show you how to write that manually. So hopefully now you really understand what you're getting when you say for rec and reader. Now, we know that we have a name and a reps column because those are the names of the fields in the first line, or at least we assume we do. So, this is just generic code. It's reading whatever is on the first line and using those as the column names, which will be the keys for our dictionary. And so we are assuming that we can do this, but I'm going to talk later about how this right here could break. For now, it's a good place to start. So we're going to get the name and the reps from those two elements of the dictionary. And we need to figure out what are the low and the high values going to be, because again, we're trying to create this data structure where it's going to have the name of the exercise. Well, we've got that. And then we want the low and then the high values to use to randomly select some integer in that range. So I want you to think about, like, instead of 0, 0, what's going to go here? How are you going to get that value out of reps? And I have a bunch of ideas here, like if reps is 20 to 50, as it is on the first line, you could use reps.split. And that's going to, if you split on the dash, it's going to give you back 2050. That's pretty handy, but we want the integer values 20 and 50 and not the string values. So how could you turn those into integers? Another method for parsing this file out is to maybe use a regular expression. So a digit, the \d is a digit, so it matches one of anything from 0 to 9. So I need to use plus, so it'll match, 1 or 2 or 3 if we're really sadistic and we want to do hundreds of repetitions. So some digit, some one or more digits, followed by a dash, followed by some one or more digits. And we want to be able to capture each one of those digits so that we have the low and the high value. So we can put parentheses on these. And we talked about using matching parentheses in a couple of exercises. So that's a couple of ideas that you could use over here, somewhere in here, to fix the low and high and make those into integer values. So I'm going to leave it as an exercise for you to finish writing Read CSV. I would say that you should not move to the next stage in writing your program until you can get this to work, running PyTest on the wad.py, because it's going to try to exercise, it's going to try to run this function, which is going to exercise this function. And so once you have this working, the Read CSV, then you're going to have a list of exercises that you can use to create this table. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So assuming that you get this working, one of the first things, so we're going to call our get args here, which we do. We're going to be using the random module, so we're going to have to say random seed is going to be equal to args.seed. And that means that we're going to need to import the random module. So import random. And, we're going to, instead of printing that, we're going to get back some exercises. Something like this. And we're going to say from read CSV, and we're going to pass it args.fh. So that's, we're going to get back some list of tuples from this function once it works. And we're going to be able to, if we were to use the pprint module, which we've used several times, if you want to bring that in, if we want to print that, you would from pprint import pprint, and then you'll be able to use the pprint or the pretty print module. Here I'm showing you that once you have your Read CSV working, you should be able to print something like this and see this kind of a data structure. And part of what I really want to teach you as you work through these exercises is how to create a program step by step. You don't just write the whole program and then run the test suite and you're done. You have to take little baby steps. You have to figure out a small piece of the puzzle that you can fix, get that working, test it, know that you can move forward to the next stage. So the next stage, once you've figured out how to read that CSV file, is to be able to print this data structure. Now, you don't have to do it this way. This is just the way I'm recommending you try to do it. It's a lot better than just trying to write 50 or 100 lines of code and then run it. I want you to learn how to write just a few lines of code, run it, look at it, think about it, maybe get up and take a walk or have a cup of tea, come back, think about it some more, run it again, write a test for it. There's so many ways that you could go about, inching your way piece by piece, little step by step toward a working program. So once you're able to print the whole file that you're reading in as this list of tuples, then we can import the random sample, and we can import random, which we already have, and we can take a random sample of those exercises using a k value of the number of arguments, from the arguments, the number of exercises that we're supposed to use for this. So once you're able to run this and get back all of them, then you should be able to run this where you're printing a random sample, and then in such a way that if you run it with a seed value of 1, you should get back exactly this selection of exercises. And if you're able to do this step and it looks the same as that output, and then you're able to get to this step and it looks the same as that output, you're really, you're doing well. You're making progress towards creating the program that's going to pass the test suite. So we're using the random sample here, which we've used several times in the past, and we also want to use the random randint function. And for instance, for here push-ups 25 to 75, we can use random randint to select a random integer value between 25 and 75. And this particular time, after I set random seed 1, I should get back 33, which you should be able to do as well. One thing I also point out is that you have to look at if this args easy is set to true, if it's a truthy value. And if it is, then you're going to have to halve the value. So here, if we have 33, we're going to get 16.5. And of course, we can't do half of a rep. So we need to somehow turn that into either 16 or 17. So you have a choice, when you're writing your own code, which one you choose. For the purposes of this exercise, we're going to use the int function to just truncate that number to the whole value. So if we were going to use the round function, which we have used before, this should round up to 17. But if we're going to use int, it's just going to cut off the 0.5 and leave us with 16. So those are, it's always good to know, how you could get a whole value from a floating point value. Depending on what you want, you can use int or round. Here we're going to use int. Next, we're going to talk about formatting the output.